has taken about 11 or 4 million, over 4 million lives so far. It's taken over 4 million lives since 1998 and has also displaced millions of people. Why do you think that this has dragged on so long? I mean, I've heard stories of, oh, power was not handed over properly, or the democratic process was not followed duly. But for someone who's an insider telling us this story, what do you think is responsible for this issue dragging on for so long?
The way I always frame it is that the war in the Congo is a resource war waged by U.S. allies, Rwanda and Uganda. We invaded the Congo twice, in 96 and 98, and continue to support proxy rebel militias. So in 1996, I was in DRC. Back then, I was 16, going into 17. And as a young man back then, I wanted to become a lawyer. You know, I was right in high school, getting ready to graduate and go to college. I had aspirations, I had friends and everything else. What I never thought is wars that I've seen on TV, wars that I've seen in movies, will ever happen in my country, right? And in 96, I was shocked to see that happen. And as a young person, I wasn't clear, why are people killing us? Why are these soldiers, these rebels, why are these corporations, when people are killed, are moving into lands and extracting minerals? But now I'm very clear of that. We've had the Congo, you and I wouldn't be even talking now. We are using electronic devices that we all benefiting from. Your cell phones, your laptop, your DVD players, your VCR, your microwaves, all of them have one thing in common. It has Congo's coltan. Congo holds anywhere from 64 to 80% of the world reserve of coltan. So while I may discuss the political situation where, as I shared, the U.S. allies, Rwanda and Uganda invaded the Congo in 96 and then unleashed the deaths of Holocaust proportion, I'm also clear, as Wangari Maathai said in the past, when we look at Africa's conflict, it's always about the resources. And that's something that actually, I think in Nigeria, Congo and Nigeria, we can relate. When we look at the Niger Delta, what is happening in the Niger Delta is always about the resources and many conflicts around the African continent. So my advocacy, the work that we're doing with friends and allies, is mainly to let people know, yes, we can understand the complexity of the DRC. We can know the day-to-day political situation of a government that does not represent the people, of neighboring countries destabilizing the DRC, of corporations looting Congo's minerals. But if at the core we understand that Africa's future is being stolen from Africans because they are keeping the Congo unstable, and this is not the first time it happened. It happened 100 years ago under King Leopold II, when the African continent was carved. 10 to 15 million Congolese people died in the late 1800s. 100 years later, over 6 million Congolese people have lost their lives. And I believe that this can only end the moment Africans get very conscious around the importance of the Congo for the liberation of the African continent. Not in a metaphorical and abstract way, but in a very concrete way, that if Congo is free, Congo can provide electricity to Nigeria and the rest of the African continent. And that's why we are fighting.
This is really interesting. For those who are just joining us, this is Conversations with Marianne. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, just so you know, my guest is Kambale Musavuli. He is from DRC Congo. He's a human rights activist, but he's joining us live from Ghana. We're talking about the fact that Congo is bleeding. Congo is facing a humanitarian crisis that's been going on for so long, and yet it is underreported. The question is why? We'll be right back after this break. Stay with us. Well, it's still Conversations with Marianne. I am Marianne Okon. I'm a broadcast journalist from Lagos, Nigeria. And of course, on this show, we talk about every issue that comes to mind, especially stories from Africa. And my guest today is a human rights activist from the DRC. Of course, we're talking about the DRC and the fact that there's a hashtag that has been trending called Congo is Bleeding. And he's here to tell us the story of what's happening, the realities of the people in the DRC, especially from an insider's perspective. We've heard all kinds of stories. We've heard the political perspective. We've heard government side of the story, but this is what the people have to say, and that's why we're having this conversation. Now, before we go back to Kambale, there is a video that was put out about the number of people that have been dying and the people who are facing crisis in the DRC. Right after that video, I'll bring my guest back on and we'll continue this conversation. So if you have questions, comments, please post them and be part of that conversation. So straight away, let's go to that video. It has no audio per se, but it's just going to be showing you visuals of what the statistics that has been gotten from the DRC and how many people are being affected. So take a look. All right. Well, my guest, once again, ladies and gentlemen, Kambale Musavuli is from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he's been giving us a little background into what's been happening in the DRC. Before we went on that break, you did say that if the war is stopped in the DRC can provide energy and power to countries as far as West Africa, including Nigeria, which is supposedly the big brother of Africa, in quote. Now, Kambale, I want to just take us back to some history because I did some digging before this conversation. The withdrawal of Rwanda and Uganda in 1998, during the overthrow of Mobutu Sese Seko, has been mostly blamed, for the state of shambles that the DRC has found itself. Do you by any chance buy into this? Could it be the real cause? Because some African countries, we're quick to say stuff like, oh, the white man left us too early and that's why we're still struggling with this governance thing. But do you support that notion that maybe Uganda and Rwanda play a role in the situation that you're facing in your country?
Yeah, and as we speak about Rwanda and Uganda, we also need to be clear that we are speaking about the Rwandan government and the Ugandan government. The people of Rwanda and the people of Uganda are also oppressed by their own governments. Unfortunately, as I shared earlier, when I speak about Rwanda and Uganda, I'm clear that I see the United States and the United Kingdom. They need access to Congo's minerals. We have strategic minerals that they need. When we want to take a look at it from the perspective of the colonialism has ended and everything else, that we should be able to control our land, we probably looking at the issue of the Congo, not from the context of it. Right? Congolese are being attacked and invaded, and their land are being taken. They are in a struggle beyond what's happening with the invasion that took place in the Congo. They are in the struggle of taking control of their land. And that's the narrative that needs to actually be put forward. And the narrative is, since 1885, Congolese have not been able to choose their leader and control their land. In 1885, when Western nations sat down in Berlin to cover up the African continent, Congolese were not there at the Berlin Conference. But Congo was taken from the people of the Congo and given to King Leopold. Later, as they mobilized to stop Belgian colonialism and elected their leader, Patrice Lumumba, on January 17, 1961, he was assassinated with the help of the United States, particularly the CIA and Western sycophants. And for 32 years, as the United States imposed a dictator on the Congolese, Mobutu reigned in the country, and Congolese mobilized to remove a dictator, but their will was not supported. What removed Mobutu from power was a military invasion backed by Western nations. And that military invasion has kept the Congo in a state of chaos up until today. Of course, today, as we speak, we have a president. There was an election in 2018. Many observers looked at the election as actually very problematic, and it was marred with many irregularities. But let's look at the fact of today. Just last week, the president of the Congo recognized that Morocco, a country where Africans are fighting to make sure that they are still not colonized by Morocco. I mean, as we speak about the struggle of the DRC, one African country still being colonized. But the president of the Congo, because he is actually geared toward Western interests, Congolese. But the fight of the Congolese is the noble fight. Youth of the Congo. We have 81 Congo, 81. Oh, go ahead. So you had the question.
Yeah, I have a question. Why do you say so succinctly that Congo is being colonized and that your president is playing out a Western script or a Western narrative of sorts? Why do you strongly believe that?
The facts are very clear. I'll use an example. Next year in 2021, the president of the Congo will be the leader of the African Union. He's going to be the president of the African Union next year. The African Union has a clear position on Western Sahara, right? The African Union condemned the colonization of the Sahrawi people by Morocco occupying their land. The president of the Congo just last week says that Morocco has every right to be in that land, and he's going to open an embassy in that right now, which is a position against already the African Union. When we even look at the mining interests in DRC, we have a gentleman by the name of Dan Gertler. He's an Israeli businessman who has many sanctions against him, where he has pilfered Congo's resources. No one is holding him accountable. He continues to travel with Congolese passport and Israeli passport while doing shady deals. And we can continue, like I can throw facts and facts. But the challenge is Congolese are fighting to have a leadership that represents them. In the process of fighting, they have enormous challenges against them. One, they have to face the local elite. They have to face neighboring countries. They have to face corporations and so on. And what we believe will actually help the Congolese in achieving a control of their land is a Pan-African solution to the Congo's crisis. Someone in Nigeria must care about the DRC the same way they care about Lekki. And I'm very proud of the Nigerian people. I've been saying that for quite a while because I was very impressed to see in the challenge that the Nigerian people face as they mobilized to end police brutality, they took time to lift up the story of other Africans. Congo was one of them. Namibia was another one. They show other Africans what Pan-Africanism meant. When Nigerians said, I know I'm Nigerian, but I also know I'm African. And as an African, I should lift up the stories of other Africans. And if the spirits continue, it makes it hard for the small group of elite on the African continent, be it in Nigeria, be it in Congo, be it in South Africa, or many other places, for them to continue to oppress the masses when the mass want freedom, when the mass want to be able to live in peace, when the mass want to be able to go to school and have the basic aspirations of their families, of their own aspiration being fulfilled. And that's really the call that I'll continue to push, that the situation in the Congo is a huge crisis. It's the deadliest conflict since World War II. It's a scar on the human condition. It's an African problem. And to end it, we need a Pan-African solution by having Africans come fight to liberate, fight with us as we fight to liberate the Congo.
I'm just going to read out something that I also saw in my research, which I would tell you gave me sleepless nights. It goes this way. One of the most anticipated events of 2020 was the release of the iPhone 12 Pro. An innovation at its finest, well-crafted technology, amazing stuff. But the DRC, however, is paying the price, according to this post that I saw. Congolese children are dying on slave mines, scavenging for the minerals required to produce these smartphones, according to what you had said earlier on, laptops, all kinds of techs. But it makes me wonder as a person, every time I turn on my laptop or touch my iPhone, could I be part of the problem? Am I using something that has that is enabling, or is it making child labor okay? Because I'm made to understand that a child is dying for every iPhone that I have, for every gadget that we use. One child is dying. And this portrays us as human beings. And this has nothing to just do with Africa, because these phones go across the country, across the world. It makes us as human beings question, if we really are doing the right thing, because children are dying in a certain country and we're all lining up in front of Apple stores, to buy the latest iPhone. So let's talk about the media coverage of this issue, because I've looked at some stories. They're just, facials, for this thing that's happening in the DRC. I've not necessarily seen an in-depth report per se on the issue in the DRC. Why has there not been so much media coverage of what's happening in the mind, especially for these children who are enslaved, children who are dying? I've even seen children who are forced to carry arms. Why is the media not necessarily covering it as much as it should?
It hasn't captured the global imagination, and I don't think that we have to wait for the media to cover it. Now, I'll use the example of the Free South Africa movement to end apartheid. It took quite a few decades to end apartheid, and media during that period did not necessarily cover the situation in South Africa. And we are in the same situation in DRC. While there may be a media blackout around the situation in the Congo, people's to people's connection is what we are doing right now. Will be the difference maker. How do we make sure, using technology, which has caused, of course, havoc in the DRC, but we're using technology to make sure that people are able to get the information and inform them in a way where that, one, people have to make conscious decisions around why you are getting an iPhone 12. What's the difference between an iPhone 10 and an iPhone 12? They both call. You don't have to buy an iPhone 12, literally. So it's hard. One, we educate people around consumerism, but we remind ourselves that it's not just around not buying an iPhone, right? The fundamental question in DRC, what is the problem? The problem is that the Congolese people, that Congolese child who's extracting the cobalt or the coltan, does not own these resources. That child is not paid for the labor that he's actually doing there. It doesn't benefit from the wealth of its land. So the process of exploitation is what we have to end. Not necessarily just stopping the purchase of the iPhone, questioning why is it that the richest land on the planet, the people in that land live with less than $1 a day. That's actually a fact. Why is it that the country the size of Western Europe, which has the agricultural capacity to feed the entire world until the world's population is 9 billion people, yet Congolese people are starving. The World Food Program just stated this past year that 22 million Congolese are in the brink of starvation. So the question of the control of Congolese land is important. If the land of the Congo is in the hands of the Congolese, if the people of the Congo control their land, we won't have that exploitation. Unfortunately, because of the conflict, because of the interest at stake, they are making sure every step of the way that the Congolese cannot take control of the land. And that's the story that we have to break the silence around and make sure that people know that this is happening and people can get engaged to stop it. It's not a hopeless case. It's not that there is not a solution to end the conflict. I propose a few solutions, and I hope people watching it will continue to stay connected as Congolese continue to fight to transform the country.
I want to backtrack a bit again and just focus because as a person, I am more interested as a journalist in women and children. And I'd like to report more on issues that affect them, whether it be gender violence, whether it be abuse, child abuse, rape. And this is something that's happening also in the mines within those areas that are colonized either by these what do you call them, bandits, and people who are handling those mines. I want to backtrack a little bit. These children and women that are targeted, are, especially the children, these are the future of the DRC. If children are killed in those numbers, does it not necessarily, I mean, I don't know what goes on in the minds of the politicians, especially your president, but I'm thinking about the people who are buying from these guys. Does that not worry them that the future of this country is being eroded on a daily basis? And what is the fate of the DRC if children, and these children are so tiny, I see pictures every day. If this is what's happening, are we not worried about what the future holds for the DRC? If the government is basically paying a deaf ear to this situation.
So let's zero in on the statistics, right? The International Rescue Committee says that from 1998 to 2007, 5.4 million Congolese people have died in the conflict. And they say that half of the deaths were children under the age of 5 years old. Like picture about 2 to 3 million children under the age of 5-year-old completely wiped out from there. Why are they attacking the women and why are they attacking the children? You already pointed out the future, but you really need to be clear about why are the Congolese women really paying the price for this conflict. The Congolese women are the backbone of our society. They are the strength of the culture. They are the ones that actually care for everyone. And when you destroy one woman in the Congo, you are completely destroying the whole fabric of the society. The rebels understand that. So whenever they come to a village or into a city, they target the young girls, they target the women, because they know by the moment that they destroy them, that whole area will be completely in shambles. People will move from the area because of fear of any violence that may happen to them. And of course, he already destroyed the fabric of the family. While this sounds as an extreme situation, the Congolese population is 81 million people. Half of the Congolese population, they are under the age of 18, and the majority of the Congolese population are Congolese women. And the more I'm throwing these numbers, you start saying, oh, if you want to break the spirit of the Congolese, you must destroy the women. And they are targeting them over and over. But I have hope. The reason why I have hope is if we have 81 million people and a young population, it is clear that the youth of the Congo can transform the country. Not because I said it, but because they've done so. I've seen it for the past 2 decades. The Telema uprising that happened in 2015 is an experience in my life, in my generation, of young Congolese who stood up. They did not carry a gun. They didn't carry a weapon. It reminded me of actually the NSARS movement. This happened in DRC in 2015, January 19. Young Congolese rose up in the Telema uprising. And they were successful at stopping the Congolese government from passing a law that was going to affect the situation. Resistance in DRC hasn't stopped. The challenge of the DRC is that while Congolese people are fighting on the inside, they have no control whatsoever at what's happening in Washington, what's happening in London, or what's happening at Addis Ababa at the headquarters of the African Union. This is why it's important as this said, Congo's solution is both an internal strategy, needs to have an internal strategy and an external strategy. So while Congolese are fighting on the inside, they need allies on the outside to put pressure on the negative forces to can transform the country. And that's my hope. My hope is that the young Congolese population of 30 to 40 million Congolese can transform the heart of Africa as they create alliances with other Africans on the continent and the allies around the world as well.
Let's talk about the hashtag Congo is bleeding. I've been mentioning from the beginning of this conversation that it is one of the things that has somewhat gotten the attention of the world to really take a closer look at what's happening in the DRC. How were you successful? Because I know you don't live in the DRC right now. How are you successful to get that much attention, to get that many eyes on the DRC and what's happening, knowing that there's also a black house of sorts in that region? How were you able to gather that much momentum with the hashtag?
That's a question that I would love to ask you, because if it wasn't for Nigerians, the hashtag would not even be known, right? So yes, the hashtag was created. I'm not the creator of the hashtag. It was created to be able to share information about why Congo is bleeding, so people can get information. Congo is bleeding because of its mineral wealth. Congo is bleeding because of its potential. Congo is bleeding because of our lust to have all these electronic devices. But it took the movement of Nigerians saying that while we are going to end SARS, we must elevate the story of other Africans. That's why I'm very hopeful when it comes to DRC. And people are finding out more. My challenge in the information being shared is, it's one thing to get the short, quick information around the DRC on social media, but it's another to continue to stay engaged. So as people are learning more about why Congo is bleeding, my call is for people to continue to stay engaged, because what we need are people who are informed around the situation, so that if today we say that we have a call for support to a community, people move. We have a call to put pressure on Guterres and the United Nations, people engage. We have a call to support any other cause from the Congolese on the ground, people start moving. So Congo is bleeding as a hashtag is informative, but what we need much more is, as we're learning about it, we remain engaged until Congo is free. And I keep saying, it's almost like it's a repetition, I believe that Congo can be free. Congo has been free before. Congolese have chosen their leaders before. I mean, is there any party in Africa where you do not hear Congolese music? I don't think there has ever been an African party without Congolese music. But what is lost in the party is people hear the music, but they don't hear the people of the Congo. So what we are trying to say is, while you enjoy the music, you may learn about the disaster, know that there are young and valiant Congolese who are fighting to free the country, and they want you to be by their side as they are fighting to transform their land.
Interesting. One last question before we wrap this up. This is a very, very interesting conversation. As interesting as it is, it's also very heart-wrenching. I can see the remarks of people in the comment section saying, oh my God, wow, this is sad. But of course, the reason why we're having this conversation is so that people can understand and also support the cause. And, the more voices we have, the more we can get governments to become accountable. And talking about accountability here, in Nigeria, we have a term, the body language of government in your country, with the response so far to these senseless deaths and the conflict. Like you said, you're very hopeful. But realistically, can we say there is an end in sight? And how soon can we get that to happen? Will something be done? And how much faith do you have in the process, especially with the government that you have? Because you can't make anything happen if the government does not participate willingly. So where do we go from here?
I've seen change in my lifetime, and I believe that change can also happen in the Congo. I saw how things move very quickly in Mali. I've seen movement in Ghana. I've seen movement also in Guinea and many places around the African continent. So I'm very confident that transformation will happen in DRC. But there is a very direct call that Congolese are making. In 2010, the United Nations published a report called the UN Mapping Exercise Report. This report said that what's happening in the Congo is war crime, crimes against humanity, and possible genocide if proven in the competent court. The same report called for the creation of an international tribunal for Congo. Congo has a Nobel Peace Prize winner, our first Nobel Peace Prize winner. His name is Dr. Denis Mukwege, a Congolese hero, a role model. I look up to him a lot. And his work has been to really heal the women. Unfortunately, because of the conflict, women in the DRC have been raped, hundreds of thousands of them. And in the process of the rape, unfortunately, women have suffered fistula. And Dr. Mukwege has specialized in fistula repair. He has treated over 50,000 Congolese women, sewing them back together, unfortunately. Even though he's seen so much atrocity in the hospital, when he received his Nobel Peace Prize, he said this: conflict in the Congo will not end until there is justice. And we need the truth for justice. And that justice will only happen if we implement the recommendation of the UN Mapping Exercise Report. And that recommendation is the creation of an international tribunal for Congo, so that crimes committed in the Congo will not just go as, oh, this is just a news feed that there were crimes. That he believes, because crimes in the Congo since 1996, the perpetrator of this violence have not been held accountable, that gives them permission to continue to commit these crimes. So the direct call for Congolese at this juncture is they are calling for everyone around the world to support the call for the creation of an international tribunal for the Congo, just as we did one when the Holocaust ended, and it was the Nuremberg trials. The DRC today, due to the genocide in the DRC, need an international tribunal for Congo.
I have seen a lot of people who push for all kinds of things for their countries or causes, like gay rights and the rest of them, even animal rights and environmental issues, spend nights and day in front of the UN or the African Union, mostly in Geneva. Has there been any sort of thing? Have you led, have you supported, have you been to the United Nations to push for these? Because you're asking for something that the UN and the AU can single-handedly make happen. Have you been pushing in that regard?
I haven't been pushing alone. There have been thousands of people pushing. For Dr. Mukwege in Bukavu, to others Congolese activists all around the world and their allies pushing for it. I mean, this report is really important to actually understand even why I am mentioning it. This report is not supposed to exist. It was actually being blocked. The United States blocked this report at the UN. It was a victory. On October 1st, 2010, the day this report was released, I and many other Congolese, in the middle of, it was actually raining that day, in the rain, we stood in front of the UN to make sure that we were there when it was released. This report documented, so that you understand, because I just mentioned it, there is this report. What is this report about? This report documented the most atrocious violation of human rights and international humanitarian law from 1993 to 2003. What does that actually mean? It means that if you kill 3 or 4 people in a neighborhood, that's not a serious violation of human rights. If you bury 22 people alive in a neighborhood, that's a serious one. So they looked at the most serious violation of human rights in DRC and documented 617 incidents. And the one I always tell the story of is the story of the women of Mwenga. 22 Congolese women in Mwenga in 1999 were raped in public, buried alive, and killed. And their death is in that report. The deaths of the millions of Congolese is in that report. And they blocked it. But when it was released, the report said, we have war crimes in the DRC, we have crimes against humanity, and we have possible genocide if proven in the competent court. And it's up to the Congolese to have the creation of the tribunal. After a decade since this report has been published, no one has done anything with this report. They have kept it on a shelf in Geneva. They are not doing anything at the United Nations. So Congolese have mobilized, have said, after a decade, we know where we have lived. We know our mothers are being killed. We know our younger brothers and sisters are also being oppressed. We have a document saying this person, this company, and these individuals have committed this crime, and no one has been tried. Let's make sure that it happens. Just as there was a call to end apartheid, and people thought that it would never happen, I believe that the International Tribunal for Congo will exist with the support of people around the world, and those who committed a crime from yesterday, Congolese victims, my family members, those that I know who have suffered from this war, will be in the court that day, looking at the perpetrator of violence and saying that we are vindicated today and have been held to justice.
Wow. Well, there's no better way to wrap up this conversation. I want to say a very big thank you to you, Kambale Musavuli. Thank you so much. I want you to keep doing the work that you're doing. Until I met you at my job, I probably wouldn't have known that much was happening in the Congo. So, of course, you have to keep the good work going on. Hopefully, we will get the justice that the people of the DRC deserve. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I really had to do some research on you, and I saw you, going on and on about it, but we'll not get tired. And kudos to Nigerians who helped the hashtag to go on. I think that more Congolese guys need to, befriend Nigerians so we can just keep pushing this cause, because, injury to one is injury to all. But I thank you so much once again for being part of this conversation.
Thank you.
All right. Well, for those who do not know, you can follow the hashtag Congo is Bleeding on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram. Congo is Bleeding. There are a lot of people who are saying pray for Congo. Congo is bleeding. In case you do not know what the story is about, or you have friends who do not understand, this video is going to be on YouTube. It's on Facebook, it's on Twitter. Retweet it, repost it. Let somebody see, hear, and understand what the people of DRC are going through. Children are being killed, women are being raped and murdered. And of course, this is not what we want to happen in any country of the world, because we're looking for peace. I'm Mariana Kun, thanking you all for being part of this conversation. Don't forget to go check the hashtag Congo is Bleeding. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It's MIMIEYO. Again, we will be back sometime this week with more stories coming out from Africa. Until then, have a beautiful day. Good evening.